Alex is cleaning out a jacket he hasn't worn since last winter, getting ready to donate it, when his hand hits something stiff in the inside pocket. A folded $100 bill, completely forgotten. Money that technically doesn't exist in any budget, any spreadsheet, any plan. For about 4 seconds, before he's even consciously thought about it, his brain has already decided what happens next. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Those 4 seconds, the ones that happen before you've even finished registering that you're holding free money, are one of the single best predictors of whether you'll ever build real wealth, regardless of how much you earn. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about the tiny, almost invisible decisions that quietly determine someone's entire financial trajectory. If you've ever wondered whether you're actually on track to build wealth, or just telling yourself a comfortable story, stick around, because today I'm going to walk you through a test you can run on yourself in under a minute, and it's more accurate than your income, your job title, or how responsible you think you are with money. Quick disclaimer before we get into it. I'm not a financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. Just a pattern I've watched play out over and over in how people actually behave, not how they think they behave.
Here's the rule. I call it the $100 rule, and it's simple enough to explain in one sentence. The way you handle an unexpected $100, not a raise, not a paycheck, just random, unplanned, found money, predicts your financial trajectory more reliably than your salary does. If your first reflex is to spend it, you're statistically in the group that tends to stay financially flat, no matter how much they earn. If your first reflex is to move it somewhere you can't easily touch it before you've had time to think, you're in the group that tends to build real wealth over time, almost regardless of starting income. And I want you to hold on to that distinction, reflex versus decision, because I'm going to come back to it, and it's the entire reason this test works when so many other financial personality quizzes don't. Shift number 1 is why $100 specifically is the perfect amount to reveal this. And it's not an arbitrary number I picked because it sounds catchy. Go much smaller, say $20, and it's too trivial to reveal anything. Most people mentally round it down to nothing, regardless of their financial habits. Go much bigger, say $10,000, and something different happens entirely. People suddenly feel the weight of the decision. They slow down, they research, they might even call a friend or a financial advisor before doing anything. Large windfalls trigger conscious deliberation almost automatically. $100 is right in the narrow zone that's significant enough to actually act on immediately, but small enough that most people don't feel the need to think it through first. That narrow zone is exactly where your default reflex, the one you've never consciously examined, gets to run the show completely unsupervised.
Shift number 2 is the reflex itself. And behavioral economists have a specific name for what's happening in Alex's head during those 4 seconds. It's called mental accounting, and it describes the very human tendency to treat money differently depending on where it came from, even though a dollar is a dollar no matter its origin story. Money you worked hard for, the paycheck that shows up after 2 weeks of effort, gets filed in your brain under a category that feels serious, protected, meant for real obligations. Money that just appears, found in a jacket pocket, handed to you as a gift, refunded unexpectedly, gets filed under an entirely different category. Researchers who study this call it the house money effect, borrowed from a phrase gamblers use for winnings they're playing with that technically aren't their original stake. That found $100 doesn't feel like it belongs to your actual financial life. It feels like a coupon, permission to do something fun. And that feeling is powerful enough to override whatever financial discipline you display with money you've had to earn. Shift number 3 is the other reflex, the one that predicts the opposite outcome. And it's worth being precise about what it actually looks like, because it's not about willpower in the moment at all. The people who build wealth from this exact scenario aren't standing there gritting their teeth, resisting the urge to spend the $100 through sheer force of character. Most of them move the money somewhere else almost automatically, transferring it to a savings account, dropping it into a brokerage account, before the mental accounting trick even has time to fully activate. The decision isn't being made in that moment. It was actually made weeks or months earlier when they set up the habit or the system that removes the choice entirely.
By the time the $100 shows up, there's nothing left to resist because the resisting already happened quietly in advance when nobody was watching and no temptation was on the table.
Shift number 4 is why this predicts wealth more reliably than income does. And this is the part that should reframe how you think about financial success entirely. Two people can earn the exact same salary and end up in completely different financial positions decades later, and income alone can't explain the gap. But their $100 reflex can. Someone earning $90,000 a year with a spend it reflex will find $100 and it will disappear into a nice dinner or an impulse purchase within days. And that same reflex applies to every other windfall throughout their life: bonuses, tax refunds, unexpected gifts. Someone earning half that income with a move it reflex is quietly redirecting every piece of found money into an account that compounds. And over 20 or 30 years, that habit, repeated dozens of times across dozens of small windfalls, builds a meaningfully larger financial cushion than a much higher salary combined with the opposite reflex ever produces. Income determines how much money flows through your hands. The $100 reflex determines how much of it sticks. Shift number 5 is what happens when you scale this exact same reflex up to bigger numbers. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The reflex you show with $100 is almost always the same reflex you'll show with $10,000 or $100,000, just with more zeros attached and more damage done. Research on lottery winners and people who receive sudden inheritances consistently shows a huge share of them return to their prior financial baseline within just a few years, sometimes ending up in worse shape than before the windfall arrived. The amount of money changed dramatically. The reflex underneath it never did. This is why the $100 test works as a genuine predictor and isn't just a cute thought experiment. It's a low-stakes preview of exactly how you'll behave the one time in your life a much bigger version of this exact moment actually happens. While we're on the topic of building systems that handle these moments for you automatically, I put together a community where I walk through exactly how I've set up the defaults in my own financial life. So good decisions require zero willpower in the moment. If that's useful to you, the link's in the description. No pressure, just there if you want it. Shift number 6 is the part I promised to come back to: reflex versus decision. Because understanding the difference is the entire key to actually changing your outcome, instead of just feeling bad about which category you fall into. A reflex happens automatically, before conscious thought has time to intervene. A decision requires you to be paying attention at the exact right moment, which is exhausting and unreliable to rely on forever. You cannot willpower your way through every single windfall for the rest of your life and expect to win consistently, because willpower is a finite resource that gets weaker with fatigue, stress, and plain bad timing. What you can do is redesign your environment so the reflex itself changes, the same way someone quietly rewires a bad habit, not through sheer determination, but by making the good option the path of least resistance, and the bad option require actual effort to reach. Shift number 7 is exactly how you rewire that reflex, because this test isn't useful if it just leaves you feeling like you've been sorted into a fixed category you can't escape. Start by deciding in advance, right now, before any money shows up, exactly what you'll do with unexpected cash the next time it appears. Not a vague intention, an actual specific rule. Something as concrete as any found or unplanned money under $500 goes straight into my investment account within 24 hours. No exceptions, no negotiating with yourself in the moment. Set up the transfer to happen automatically if your bank allows it, so the decision is made once, in a calm, rational moment, instead of being remade every single time temptation is standing right in front of you holding a folded bill. The goal isn't becoming a person with superhuman willpower. The goal is becoming a person who never has to use willpower in the first place, because the system already made the decision for you in advance. Shift number 8 is what this reflex actually predicts about the next 10 years of your life. And it's worth sitting with for a second, because most people never connect a single small habit to a decade-long outcome. If your reflex is to spend found money, That pattern will repeat itself dozens, maybe hundreds of times over the next 10 years across every bonus, refund, gift, and unexpected windfall life throws your way. And each one disappears without a trace, contributing nothing to your actual financial position, no matter how many of them show up. If your reflex is to move found money somewhere it can grow, that same pattern compounds silently in the background across those same dozens of windfalls. And 10 years from now, you'll be looking at an account that grew not because of one big decision, but because of 100 tiny automatic ones that never required you to feel strong or disciplined in the moment they happened.
Shift number 9 is the mirror image of this entire test, and it's just as revealing as the windfall version, maybe more so. Instead of finding $100, imagine an unexpected $100 expense shows up instead. A flat tire, a copay, a fee you forgot existed. The same underlying reflex governs both directions. Someone whose default is loose and reactive with found money tends to also treat unexpected expenses as small emergencies, reaching for a credit card without a second thought, because their financial system was never built to absorb small surprises in either direction. Someone whose default is automated and deliberate with found money almost always has some kind of buffer already sitting there for the expense version too. Not because they predicted a flat tire specifically, but because the same system that automatically moves surprise income somewhere useful also happens to leave a cushion sitting there for surprise costs. The $100 rule isn't really about windfalls at all. It's about whether your financial life has any slack built into it in either direction, or whether every unexpected dollar, coming or going, has to be handled by whatever your mood happens to be that particular day.
Shift number 10 is why a bigger paycheck doesn't automatically fix a bad reflex. And this is the part that trips up a lot of people who assume the problem will solve itself once they're earning more. The house money effect doesn't operate on a fixed dollar amount. It scales with your own sense of what counts as real money versus pocket change. Someone earning $40,000 a year might treat $100 as house money. Someone earning $200,000 a year often treats $500 or even $1,000 exactly the same way, because their internal threshold for what feels trivial has simply moved upward alongside their income. This is why you'll meet high earners who are somehow always financially stretched, and why you'll meet modest earners who are quietly building serious wealth. The reflex scales with identity and habit, not with the number on a pay stub, which means a raise without a rewired reflex just means bigger, more expensive versions of the exact same leak. Shift number 11 is what this actually adds up to in real numbers, because abstract reflexes are easy to nod along with and easy to forget by tomorrow. Picture two people, same job, same $65,000 salary, same city. Over the course of a typical year, small windfalls like this show up more often than people realize. A work bonus, a tax refund, a rebate, a cash gift, a reimbursement that comes in slightly higher than expected, adding up to somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 a year for most people once you actually track it. Person 1 treats every bit of it as house money, and it evaporates into small purchases and nights out, contributing exactly $0 to their long-term financial position, no matter how many years pass. Person 2 automatically redirects that same $2,500 a year into an investment account, earning a modest 8% average return. After 10 years of nothing more than this one small reflex repeated automatically, Person 2 has accumulated somewhere around $36,000, money that came from windfalls they never had to budget for, sacrifice a lifestyle to save, or think about more than once at the moment they set up the automation. Person 1 has the same salary, the same decade of life experience, and nothing to show for that particular slice of their financial history. Same income the entire time. Completely different outcome, built entirely on a reflex that takes about 4 seconds to run every single time it's triggered. Shift number 12 is why almost nobody learns this from watching other people, which is part of why the reflex stays hidden for so long. You can see someone's car, their apartment, their vacation photos. You will never see the 4 seconds that happened in their head the moment a random $100 showed up. because that moment leaves no visible trace either way. Nobody posts a photo of the transfer they made into a savings account out of pure habit, and nobody announces that a windfall quietly disappeared into a dinner they don't even remember eating. This is precisely why two people who seem financially similar on the outside, similar jobs, similar lifestyles, similar spending on the things everyone can see, can be running completely opposite versions of this reflex underneath, invisibly compounding or invisibly leaking for years before the gap between them becomes obvious to anyone, including themselves.
So let's go back to Alex for a second. Standing there with that folded $100 bill in his hand, feeling the pull of those first 4 seconds before he's even consciously aware a decision is being made. In the version of this story where nothing changes, he treats it like house money, grabs dinner with friends that weekend, and the $100 evaporates completely, leaving behind nothing but a nice memory and zero impact on his actual financial life. In the version where he's already rewired the reflex, he doesn't even really decide anything in that moment. He just opens his banking app out of habit, moves it into the account he set up for exactly this kind of surprise, and goes back to cleaning out his closet, barely thinking about it again. Same jacket, same forgotten $100, same 4 seconds. Completely different next 10 years, built entirely on which reflex was already running before he even knew a test was happening. That's the $100 rule. It was never really about the $100. It's about which version of that reflex you're currently running on autopilot. And now that you know it's there, you get to decide whether to leave it exactly as it is. The next time an unexpected $100 lands in your hand, whether it's tucked in an old jacket, sitting in a birthday card, or showing up as a refund you'd forgotten you were owed, pay attention to those first 4 seconds. Not with guilt, and not with some dramatic vow to change your entire life overnight, just genuine curiosity about which reflex actually shows up when nobody is watching and nothing is planned in advance. That single moment of noticing is usually the first step toward eventually rewriting it. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor, and this video is for educational purposes only. Any results depend on your own decisions. I'll see you in the next one.